So the next topic with OBS that we want to cover is these profiles. You can see them kind of either inside my screen or here. So they're called scenes, and you can switch between them while you're recording if you want to do that, or you can just switch between them, before you start your recording. So I've got my recording running here, and they just make the screen look nicer. You can see when I've got none of that showing, you can see all of my tabs and all of my icons. It can be distracting for the user. Also, they can see all of your bookmarks and other tabs you've got open and your notes and your inbox, and it just all looks chaotic. So to have it look nice like this, we use scenes, and I create these colored overlays and the shadow effect inside of Figma, and it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to show you how to do that now. And then there are some other decorations that you can put in. You can put your logo, or you can put your picture. If you don't use a camera, it's still nice for people to see at least a still image of who's talking to them. So let's jump into Figma, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do this. But before I do that, I'm going to switch to clean screen so that you can see what we're starting with. So we're starting with my whole screen here, and what we're going to do is take a screenshot of the entire screen, okay, the whole thing. We're going to paste that. So now in Figma, we've got a scale model of the screen at exactly the right pixels. So it says 1919 by 1079. We just want to bump that up to 1080 and 1920. We'll switch off this constrain proportions so that we can set these individually without them affecting each other, because we do want that to be the entire screen of a laptop screen. So I'm on a laptop. That's one important thing to note. Of course, this is only going to work based on your screen, the size of your screen. If you are using a giant monitor, I would recommend that you set it up somehow so that when you're recording, you're not recording the entire giant monitor. You'll notice as well that I have all of my sidebar or my menu, I've got it attached to the side of the screen. And the reason that I do that is because if this is your whole screen, and then you've only got a menu at the top and the bottom, which is fairly common, and the area that you're capturing is just all in the middle, it makes this area that ends up being visible to the user very wide and not very tall. It doesn't actually look or feel that nice, especially when you start to put in the effects. That doesn't look nearly as nice as that, or even if it's a bit smaller like that. So this is just so that when I'm blocking out the area that I want to capture and the area I want to exclude, the result is not too different in terms of proportions than what we started with. See, that's almost just a scaled down version of the whole screen. So anyway, that's the first step. Grab a rectangle and draw it over the area that you actually want to include in your capture. And then you can zoom right into the corners. Make sure that it's inside the area, and it might be nice just to leave a tiny little buffer of a few pixels just to make sure that you are not going to be showing any lines around the edge. Okay, so once you've done that, you can add a border radius, okay, or you can do that later. It's not a big deal. So this is the exact size of the area that we want to keep visible. We kind of want to cut a window out of that. And I'm going to go now and make a new frame. Okay, so we can make a frame here. I mean, you can do it this way, just manually typing in 1920, 1080. You can also just use a pre-made frame. That's like a default size for frames. I think there's one here, desktop. Actually, no, they don't really have it. Anyway, 1920 by 1080 is the recommended size for YouTube videos. So that's what we'll go with. Just so happens to be the size of a normal laptop screen as well. So then what we're going to do is drag this one. So you can hold down the Alt key and drag a copy of it into that frame. We want to try and put it dead center. Okay, so those red lines will indicate when you're right in the center. I like to have it dead center. If you wanted to have a logo, at the top left in your finished overlay, so up in this, up above there, you could do that. And you can shift it however you want. It's not a big deal. So yeah, you can play with this. I'm going to do it just completely centered. I think that for me feels the nicest way. So the next thing we want to do, let's just add a shadow. Okay, so this shadow, the default one, so if you go to effects and just add an effect, it will default to drop shadow. It's going to be a very hard shadow. We want to have a nice subtle one. So we're going to increase the blur. We're going to increase the spread. We're going to increase the Y. I think we want to make that blur a lot more. Reduce the spread a little bit. Just play with that until you've got a nice subtle effect. Having this gray actually makes it too hard to see the shadow. We're going to make that white so that you can see we've got a nice subtle shadow effect. We might even make that a little bit more on the Y-axis, but that looks pretty nice. Now for our background layer, so the frame around the edge, you can choose, like you can go with a gradient if you want to. I don't know why that's going over the top of it's odd. All right, so we want this to be white. I don't know why that applied a radius to both of the, or a gradient to both of those, but anyway, so we can make this, a nice subtle gradient, or you can just have it a single color. I mean, you don't want it to be too busy. You don't really want it to distract from what's happening on the screen, but you might want to have it just match your brand. Okay, so if you've got a really fun brand, then have it colorful. If you don't, then you might just want to have it very dark or black or whatever. This, now, if we export that, we could kind of use that, but, well, we could use it as a background and then position the video directly on top of it. But we don't want to do that. What we're going to do is cut this white part out so that we're just left with the background. And so I'm going to call this one background, and then I'm going to export that. Okay, something very important before you export this, make sure that clip content is switched on. Otherwise, just make sure it's on. I won't explain why. All right, so we're going to export that. Okay, as soon as it's exported, you can just drag it back in again because we actually want it, but we just want it as an image rather than a background with this overlaid, because we're just going to copy this across. Okay, bring it to the front. What you end up with, if we remove that effect, is the exact same thing visually, but we actually have a rectangle here, and then we've got an image in the background. If we select both of those, so select this and then shift select, you've got this option here for subtract selection. If we click that, it still looks the same, which is exactly what we want. But if you look closely now, or if I draw a triangle or a rectangle and send it to the back, it's been cut out, right? The middle part of this, even though because of the shadow, it looks like it's an object hovering on the background, it's actually transparent. So we're ready now. We can export this. Okay, we want to rename it. Don't leave it called subtract. Call it OBS Screen Overlay. And then, if you use multiple different ones, give it a name or whatever. But that's ready to export. And we just do the same thing again. You want to use a PNG file so that the transparent part stays transparent. Okay, we've downloaded that. Now we can go into OBS and make a new scene. Okay, call it, I'm going to call this colorful overlay, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I've got my new screen, my new scene. You can't see anything because I haven't added any captures yet. So you're going to have to trust me on this. Go to the sources and add display capture first up. So I will just go and pull this one in. Actually, sorry, I've reused one that I already had, so I'm going to remove that and just make a new one. Don't worry about this part. Okay. So this is my whole screen. Now I want to add an image, and I'm going to create a new one, and then I've got to choose where the image file is. So if you have just downloaded that overlay and it's in your downloads, move it to where you want it to be, before you do this. Otherwise, eventually you're probably going to trash your downloads and you'll lose that. So move it first and then you reference it in. But I'm just going to do this quickly. Okay, so now we've got our overlay and it's on top of the display capture layer, right? We can lock this in position because we don't want to accidentally move that, but we can move the display capture behind it so that it's only got the part that we want to have visible, right? And that's pretty much done. I've just shifted mine. There's probably a little bit more tweaking to do. It really depends on your screen size and so on. One thing I would mention that will make it a lot easier to reposition this, instead of using primary monitor, you can change the properties of this and use, sorry, not display capture. Use, let me check here, window capture. All right. If you use window capture, it's going to let you see a different window while you are working on this. So I'll add one called window capture and I'll switch it to the Figma window. Make sure that it's behind your overall. And now when I move this window capture around, you can see the position that I need to have to get Figma so that all of the Figma stuff is visible, but none of the stuff that I want to chop out. Okay, the last few things you can do, I'll just switch to clean screen so that you can see what I'm doing. You can add more images to use as your decorations around the screen. So you can put your logo and your picture or anything else, if you want to put a title for a video, and that's about it. Okay, so have fun. If you got any questions, let me know, and I'll speak to you later.